Operational provisions of Revised Customs Port Operational Manual. Section 13. Statutory provisions on entrance and clearance. The provision of Section 1001 to 1025 of the Tariff and Customs Code of the Philippines, amended, on entrance and clearance of vessel are deemed incorporated in this manual. Section 14. Pre-arrival. A notice of arrival, or NOA, with estimated time of arrival, or ETA. The shipping agent or representative of a vessel engaged in the foreign trade entering in any of the Philippine ports of entry shall notify the Pier and Inspection Division Bay Service Section of the vessel arrival and other particulars at least 24 hours in advance. Upon receipt of the notice of arrival, the Customs Inspector or E2M OIC of the Pier and Inspection Division Bay Service Section shall perform the following functions. First is electronically verify the vessel registry number or principal and other vessel information through client profile registration system. Second is input the estimated time of arrival in the customs system. Third is encode the time and date in the system and affix his signature on the hard copy of the notice of arrival. Fourth, furnish the customs boarding team a copy of a processed notice of arrival. Assignment of customs boarding team. The customs boarding team shall be assigned by the Chief Bay Service Section through a duly signed assignment order. Section 12, Item Number 4 is contained therein. All documents except copies for the customs inspector on board the vessel shall be forwarded to the office of the Chief Bay Service Section for transmittal to officers concerned. Inward Foreign Manifest and Consolidated Cargo Manifest Contents. The hard copy of the Inward Foreign Manifest required to be submitted by the master of the vessel to the boarding officer shall contain the following information. First is the bill of lading, marks and numbers of carton drums, boxes, and crates, and other forms of protective packaging. Container and seal number of containerized and initials if full container load and if less container load. Number of packages, kind of packages, carton, box, crates, drums, etc. Contents of description of cargo, shipper, consignee, gross weight in metric tons, measurement in cubic meters, port of origin, notify party. Inward Foreign Cargo Manifest submitted not in accordance with the above requirements shall be rejected. The Customs Senior Boarding Officer shall, with his initials, note down all the copies of Inward Cargo Foreign Manifest delivered to him by the master of vessel, the specific time and date when such documents were received. In Inward Foreign Cargo Manifest is not in the English language. The Customs Senior Boarding Officer shall require its translation to English before accepting the same. Late submission. First offense, 10,000. Second offense, 20,000 pesos. Third offense, 30,000 pesos. And second, non-compliant submission, 30,000 pesos. Section 15. Arrival. A document permits quarantine certificate for incoming vessels from a foreign port, entry of vessels from any port or place outside of the Philippines shall not be permitted until they have obtained a quarantine certificate issued under the authority of the Bureau of Quarantine. However, if a vessel has already been issued a quarantine certificate in the first Philippine port of entry, he will not be required to undergo another quarantine formalities at succeeding port of call at the Philippines. Entrance of vessel from a foreign port. Upon arrival of a vessel from a foreign port, BOC OPM Form Number 9 with customs documentary stamp duly accomplished by the master in 4. The following customs personnel shall be the members of the customs boarding team: customs senior boarding officer, customs inspector, customs guard or guards. Submission of advance electronic manifest before arrival of vessel engaged in foreign trade through E2M customs system and penalties. The submission of electronic copy of inward foreign manifest and electronic copy of consolidated cargo manifest must be done through any the value-added service providers accredited by the BOC. The EIFM in the case of shipping lines must be electronically submitted at least 12 hours before arrival of the carrying vessel. The ECCM in case of non-vessel operating common carrier cargo consolidator must be submitted at least 6 hours before arrival of carrying the vessel. The cut-off time for e-manifest submission is calculated from the submitted estimated date and time of arrival using the BOC Gateways service clock. The EIFM must be submitted ahead of the ECCM. If the ECCM is submitted ahead of the EIFM, the ECCM will not be registered in the E2M custom system but has to be resubmitted when the EIFM is already registered. Registration of e-manifest. The system is automatically registers a manifest in the 2M customs system if the manifest meets the submission deadline. Copy shall be presented to the office of the customs clearance officer within 24 hours. Documents to be produced by master upon entry of vessel. The following documents properly accomplished shall be submitted by the master to the customs senior boarding officer: quarantine certificate o pratic, clearance of vessel from last port of call, original and 4 copies of inward foreign manifest duly signed by the master, 3 copies each of the following: crew list, passengers list for aliens as required by the immigration law enforced in the Philippines, copy of original duplicate of bill of lading, bonded store list, narcotics and dangerous drugs list, ship stores list, mail list, firearms and ammunition list, crew declaration list, parcel list, shipping article and register of the vessel of Philippine registry. True cargo manifest, if any, which shall be deposited to the customs inspector and shall be returned to the masters prior to departure to other ports. Cargo stowage plan or hatch list. if passenger vessels 3 copies of disembarking passengers list and their baggage declaration. The Customs Senior Boarding Officer shall, after carefully comparing the copies with the original manifest, stamp each of such manifest on last page thereof with a rubber stamp provided for the purpose and verify that the necessary information required in accordance with all articles where goods, merchandise, and any other cargo including unaccomplished baggage and orders or in cargo from abroad received by the master's officer and crew of vessels without bill of lading or not covered by manifest or parcel list shall be subjected to seizure as unmanifested cargo under customs law. The Customs Senior Boarding Officer shall, after carefully comparing the copies with the original manifest, stamp each other of such manifest on the last page thereof with a rubber stamp provided for that purpose, and verify that the necessary information required in accordance with all articles where goods, merchandise, and any other cargo including unaccomplished baggage and orders of in cargo from abroad received by the master's officer and crew vessels with bills of lading or not covered by manifest of or parcel list shall be subjected to seizure as unmanifested cargo under the customs law. Distribution of inward foreign manifest. Hard copies. The inward foreign manifest shall be distributed to the following offices: original copy, Peers and Inspection Division or equivalent offices, 1 copy, Commission on Audit, Resident Auditor through the Office of the Commission, 1 copy, Intelligence Group, 1 copy, Assessment and Operation Monitoring Group. Permits for discharge and lading of cargo. Unless the vessels has put into in distress, the Customs Senior Boarding Officer shall, upon placing the vessel under customs surveillance and control, issue a general permit. Such permit, however, shall not constitute an authority for the loading of export cargo or delivery of import cargo at ship's side without the required entries of permit, as the case may be. The general permit shall be endorsed by the customs inspector assigned on board the vessel mentioned in the permit at the back thereof, showing whether all import cargoes has been discharged at the port or not. Endorsement permit. The following permits shall be endorsed on the reverse side thereof: the general permit, the ship side permit, permits for sending of special consignments of cargo to the pier or to the parcel section, permits issued by the deputy collector for operation or its equivalent office for the transfer of cargo from one vessel to another. On the same permit and directly under the preceding endorsement, the receiving customs inspector shall make an endorsement to the effect that he received the cargoes on board the vessel to which he is assigned. All endorsement and returns shall be signed over printed name and executed clearly and legibly, especially with reference to any figures that may be included. All minor corrections shall be initialed by the endorsing officer. All other permits shall be endorsed on the reverse side thereof. Shipside permit. Shipside permit is when duly processed and approved by the Collector of Customs or Deputy Collector of Operations or its equivalent office. As the case may be, it's an authority for the customs inspector assigned on the vessel to allow the discharge of cargoes specified on the permit at shipside and to lighters underguarded. Three kinds of shipside permit. First is the regular shipside permit. Second is the special shipside permit. Third is the temporary shipside permit. That the cargo is underguarded continuously until released by the Bureau of Customs. That the lighter shall not be taken out of the customs designated barge pool area until the regular shipside permit is issued by the Deputy Collector for Operations or its equivalent office and is presented to the customs inspector of the carrying vessel. That the Deputy Collector for Operations or ship, piers, and inspection division or its equivalent office be duly notified of the discharge and the temporary permit. Pending issuance of shipside permit. Pending issuance of shipside delivery permit, the customs inspector on the board may receive written requests from consignees countersigned by the ship's agent and approved by the Collector of Customs that certain designated goods to be discharged into separate carriers. The customs inspector assigned on a vessel who allows the discharge of the cargoes at shipside shall comply strictly with the conditions and or requirements stated on the permit, and prior to the unloading of the cargoes, he must first click the cargoes mentioned in the permit against the inward foreign manifest. After effecting total discharge of cargoes unto lighter, the customs inspector shall endorse the shipside permit at the back thereof specifying quantity of cargoes discharged. He must indicate the names of lighters loaded and corresponding names of the customs guards in charge of each lighter loaded. Transfer note or boat note shall be made in sextuplicate by the customs inspector on board. For cargoes delivered at shipside, the transfer note shall I show the following: name of the vessel and registry number, name of lighter, name of broker, shipside permit number, marks and number, kinds and description of goods, time and date lighters left alongside the vessel, name and signature of customs inspector. Any other information and or remarks. The copies of the prepared transfer note shall be distributed as follows: original and duplicate to customs guard in charge, triplicate attached to the shipside permit together with the guard's check report, quadruplicate to patron the lighter, quintuplicate inspector's file, sextuplicate attach 10 the booklet of the transfer note issuing officer. Boarding sequence. The vessel upon arrival from a foreign port at the port of entry and after the issuance of the quarantine certificate by the Bureau of Quarantine shall be boarded in the following order: Customs boarding officer, customs inspector and customs guard assigned to the vessel, immigration officer, Department of Agriculture or Plants and Animals Fisheries quarantine representative as required, other agencies or person authorized by the Collector of Customs. Customs boarding team on foreign vessel. The customs senior boarding officer shall place the vessel under customs control and surveillance by posting customs inspector and customs guard thereon. No person shall be permitted to go on board such vessel except the pilot, consul, health officials, immigration, and customs officer without the permission of the customs inspector on board of vessel. No tugboat, rowboat, or other watercrafts shall be allowed to go alongside a vessel to ferry any person to or from the vessel without a permit from the collector of customs or his duly authorized representative. Unauthorized tugboats, rowboats, and other watercrafts shall be kept away from vessel engaged in foreign trades at a distance of not less than 50 meters. Actual time of arrival of foreign vessel through E2M customs system. After boarding formalities, the E2M o IC o Piers and Inspection Division Base Service Section shall input the actual time of arrival from the boarding information sheet submitted by the customs boarding officer. Submission of supplemental cargo manifest. Supplemental e-manifest submission is treated as non-compliant or late submission and shall be subject to penalty as stated in Part 11, Section 14C of this manual. Submission of supplemental e-manifest. First, cargo or containers not listed in the IFM but are otherwise recorded in the stowage plan must be covered by a supplemental e-manifest submitted to the BOC through the VASP not later than 48 hours from the date of discharge of the last package from the vessel. Foreign cargoes or containers not listed in the IFM and stowage plan. The supplemental e-manifest must be submitted not later than 24 hours from the date of last package. Third, in both cases, the Deputy Collector for Operations and the Chief Piers and Inspection Division monitor the 48 or the 24 hours rule as the case may be before authorizing the registration of the supplemental e-manifest into the electronic manifest. Unloading of cargoes. Containerized. Discharging of containerized cargo shall be authorized only upon issuance of a general permit by the Customs Senior Boarding Officer. Thereafter, unloading of containers shall commence. During unloading, the customs inspector or guard on board foreign vessel shall verify the container number against the discharging sequence. Customs inspector or customs guard shall check or inspect if container seals are intact. Submit discharging report shall be submitted upon completion of the unloading operation. Bulk and brick bulk. The clearance of cargoes for bulk and brick bulk cargoes or shipments such as liquids, chemical, petroleum products, and all other cargo shipped in bulk or brick bulk, the duties and taxes of which are normally determined by weight, shall be governed by pertinent regulations, more particularly on procedure for the bulk and brick bulk cargo clearance enhancement program mandated under Administrative Order AO number 443 as amended by EO 2343. The accredited surveyor may be allowed to board the vessel for purpose of securing on need for a discharge port survey. Reports due to absence of a load, port survey, report or upon agreement by the shipper and consignee upon appropriate instruction from the one-stop shop headed by the Deputy Commissioner of Assessment and Operation Coordinating Group. In the event that the shipment is covered by an alert order or that the shipment is different from the details in the entry, the customs inspector or the customs guard assigned on board the vessel shall inform in writing the formal entry division or its equivalent office through the office of the ship Pierce and Inspection Division, indicating therein the exact location of the shipment for the usual customs examination and processing of the entry. Unloading of bulk and breakbulk cargoes at shipside. Shipside discharge of cargoes shall be authorized only upon presentation of necessary shipside permit issued by the Deputy Collector for Operations. Upon receipt of the shipside permit, the customs inspector assigned on board shall verify the subject shipment, issue a transfer note in 6 duplicate covering the shipment mentioned, assign a customs guard to check the shipside permit so that only those authorized to be discharged are unloaded. Assign a regular customs guard to underguard the lighter with the cargoes of if the permits so stipulates. When bulk cargoes are to be discharged onto lighters, then customs inspector shall not allow any cargo to be unloaded without first obtaining the ton or inch immersion table of the lighter from the patron. After discharge of bulk cargoes at shipside, the customs inspector on board must sign and attest to the long tally of the consignee surveyor report. In case wherein vessels are anchored at the anchorage, personal effects, parcel cargoes, and the like may be discharged at shipside and to the launch for subsequent immediate delivery to the office of Bay Service Section. Cargo shall be released upon presentation to the customs inspector on board a statement of settlement of duties and taxes duly issued by the formal entry division or its equivalent office. Duties of customs inspector relative to import cargo. Unless the collector of customs permit their discharge into lighter or carriers to be subserve public interest, all vessels arriving from foreign port shall discharge their import cargo at officially designated piers. Instructions to customs inspector relative to carriers receiving import cargo. No cargo shall be discharged at shipside into open carriers except those authorized for delivery there under existing customs rules and regulations. All other cargo shall be discharged into secured lighters capable of being locked and sealed with customs seals. Carriers alongside a vessel having a cargo that is under customs supervision shall not be permitted to shift to another vessel to receive cargo unless authorized by the Collector of Customs or Deputy Collector of Operations of the port. Empty carriers shall not be permitted to lie at night alongside a government pier. Laden particularly laden carriers at shipside containing import cargo shall not be permitted to leave the vessel without permission from the customs inspector on board. All merchandise and other movable articles on board a vessel, not include the cargo manifest or ship stores, shall be included in the list of ship stores if not so included at the time of boarding. They shall be checked as supplementary list prepared and then sealed as part of the ship store. The customs inspector shall, as soon as practicable after a vessel has been placed in charge, verified by personal inspection the seal of the ship stores which may be broken, ship firearms, except in unusual cases, shall not be placed under seal but checked, shall be taken off them, which shall be verified before the vessel sails to ensure no arms have been unlawfully landed. Ship stores may be discharged under the same conditions as other cargo, but the written permissions of the quarantine officer shall be presented to the customs inspector before the discharge is permitted. An excess of supply in ship store in a vessel arriving from foreign ports, all of the articles purchased abroad for sale on board a vessel as saloon store or supplies justiciable, but all ship stores and saloon stores or supplies not exist of the proper requirements of the vessel in her voyage outside of the Philippines shall not deem justiciable. Surplus in ship stores shall not be transferred from one vessel to another except to a vessel of the same line in active service in the foreign trade. The surplus ship stores of a vessel of Philippine registry shall be justiciable on her changing from status to a cost-wise status. Unloading of cargoes at dockside. Import cargoes. All cargoes discharged at dockside from a vessel shall not be accounted for by the customs inspector. However, a customs guard on each working batch must see to it that the ship checkers is on board, making a tally of each sling, and if a sling goes down without a tally, the customs guard must stop the discharge from that hatch until such time that the checker does his job correctly. Passengers, baggage, parcel list, and crew personal effects. The customs inspector shall cause the immediate discharge of all baggage, parcel cargoes, and articles brought in by the ship crews and passengers for discharge at the pier. The common inspector shall remind the ship officer of the pursuit of the vessel, if necessary, that baggage and parcel must be discharged promptly and have the same transferred underguarded to the office of the base service section. If baggage and parcels are to be discharged into a carrier in the stream, the customs inspector shall assign a customs guard to underguard such baggage and parcels to the office of the base service section. For purposes of determining whether in cargo or entrusted shipment of merchandise or articles from abroad be included in the parcel list, any cargo which is found to exceed 350 pounds 159 kilos in weight and 40 feet in measurements shall not be included in parcel list, and such the customs inspector shall not allow the discharge. The shipping agent concerned shall file a supplemental cargo manifest for said parcel or cargo within 24 hours after the arrival of the carrying vessel and pay the corresponding duties and taxes. Section 16. Departure. Documents required for exportation. In general, exportation declaration, commercial invoice, packing list, export permit for regulated cargoes. Additional documents required: CBW shipments, visa shipments, provincial loading, constructive warehouse and immediate exportation, special permit to load, inspector's certificate of lading, report of customs inspector on board. The inspector's certificate of lading is accomplished by the customs inspector on board of a carrying vessel for all conventional export cargoes loaded into vessels. He shall submit the original copy of the inspector certificate of lading together with the working copies of the export declaration permit covered by the report to the exportation or processing office concerned with 5 working days after the departure of the carrying vessel to which the conventional export cargoes are loaded. The customs inspector shall maintain a running list of all export declaration or permits presented to him covering export cargoes to be loaded on board vessel to which he is assigned. From the prepared list, the customs inspector shall prepare the inspector's certificate of lading covering such exportation, indicating therein the actual number that kinds of goods loaded. For ports wherein a customs container control division does not operate, the customs inspector of the piers and inspection division thereat shall act as the staffing or loading inspector as the case may be, and such the assigned customs inspector shall observe the enumerated duties and responsibilities as herein provided. Customs clearance of foreign vessel. For purposes of clearance of a vessel, the following documents shall be presented the PID clearance section prior to the issuance of clearance. First is the BOC OPM form number 12. Second is the BOC OPM form number 10. And BOC OPM form number 11. And BOC form number 2. BOC form number 3. And BOC form number 88. Bureau of Quarantine Clearance for outgoing vessels. Plant quarantine clearance, post office clearance, request for customs clearance by shipping agency signed by the customs inspector concurring that the vessel in which he is assigned is ready to sail for foreign port. The register and shipping articles if the vessel is of Philippine registry. The consular certificate of entry if the vessel is of foreign registry when required. When a vessel from a foreign port is compelled by stress of weather or other necessity to put into any port other than of her destination, such vessel in distress for bunkering, watering, provisioning, sheltering, emergency repairs, landing, sick crew or member, or other like causes, other than for loading or unloading of cargoes. The Customs Senior Boarding Officer shall place the vessel under customs surveillance and supervision by posting the customs inspector on board. Staffing and loading of cargoes. Containerize. Instructions relative to staffing of containerized exporting cargoes. Upon the issuance of the authority to load, the export declaration permits duly processed at the export division shall be forwarded to the Customs Container Control Division by exporters or shippers or customs representatives. The notice of stopping shall be submitted at least 24 hours in advance, indicating the kind and quantity to be stuffed. The assigned staffing inspector shall not allow stuffing of export cargoes into the container van unless the duly processed export declarations permit of the cargoes to be stuffed shall have been presented with the authority to load stamp thereon. The assigned staffing inspector shall supervise the actual staffing, which shall be conducted in the presence of representatives from all parties concerned. He shall carefully verify export declaration or permits to ascertain the exact quantity and kind of cargo to be stuffed. Upon completion of the conduct of staffing, the assigned staffing inspector shall affix his signature on the staffing report or sequence attesting to the fact that the cargoes were indeed stuffed into the container. Duties and responsibilities of the staffing inspector. The staffing inspector shall supervise the actual staffing at the place where it shall be conducted. He shall see to it that only those export cargoes with duly processed export declaration or permits with the authority to load shall be allowed to be stuffed into the container van. He shall ascertain that the accompanying supporting documents or attachments to export declaration permits are complete and corresponded to what has been declared therein. He shall make that any discrepancy in the export declaration or permit as against the export cargoes to be stuffed in certified accordingly. Upon the completion of the stuffing, he shall ascertain that the doors of the container van are closed, locked, and properly sealed. In case of the stuffing outside custom zone, he shall issue transfer note with cargoes detail. Upon the departure of the vessel which the container van was loaded, he shall accomplish the inspector's certificate of lading. As to warehouse export shipment, he shall certify and sign the certificate of inspection and loading, and shall perform such other duties that may be assigned to him from time to time by his superiors. Inspector certificate of lading or reports of the staffing inspector. The staffing inspector shall accomplish the inspector's certificate of lading, specifying the number of containers and descriptions of goods preparing on each of the export declaration or permit. In the remarks the van number opposite the cargoes contained in one export declaration or permit. For export cargoes, stuff, or placed in a container vans, the inspector certificate of loading shall be accomplished in 5 copies and signed by the staffing inspector assigned to the conduct actual staffing. He shall submit original copy of the ICL together with the working copies of the export declaration permits covered by the report to the export division concerned within 5 working days after the departure of the carrying vessel to which the containerized export cargoes were loaded. Duty requirements and overtime work conditions. All incidental expenses attendant to the service rendered by the staffing inspector for the conduct of actual staffing shall be for the account of the exporter or shipper and or CFS operator served. Staffing of containers in customs bonded warehouse. When an export cargoes are to be staffed in containers at shippers customs bonded warehouse, the staffing shall supervised by the warehouse man. Loading of bulk and break bulk export cargoes at ship side. Loading of export cargoes shall be elected only upon presentation to the customs inspector on board a duly approved loading permit. All cargoes at the ship side shall have a appropriate permit for such loading. The customs inspector shall take note of the names of lighters where the export cargoes are loaded, specifying the marks and numbers, and must see to it that what was loaded conform to the number of packages appearing on the export entry. Instructions relative to loading of containerized export cargoes. The loading inspector assigned to the carrying vessel shall verify and ascertain that the export declaration or permits with the container numbers indicate therein have been duly processed at the Customs Container Control Division, duly signed by the Chief Customs Container Control Division of his duly authorized representative. The loading inspector shall not allow the loading of containerized export cargoes into his assigned vessel without the corresponding duly processed export declaration permits with the authority to load stamped thereon. The loading inspector shall allow the loading only upon presentation of an authority to load by the following: Export Division, Export Coordination Division, Office of the Deputy Collector for Operations, for constructive warehousing and immediate exportation and foreign transshipment permits, CCCD for SPL empty containers. The loading inspector shall make sure that the containers to be loaded are indeed intended to his assigned vessel and for that particularly voyage of the vessel. Upon verification that all the export containerized cargoes are covered by export declaration or permits, he shall then consolidate all pertinent export declaration permits and sign the sequence of loading prepared by the shipping agent and submit the same to the customs inspector on board the carrying vessel before commencement of loading. Duties and responsibilities of the loading inspector. The loading inspector shall inspect and see to it that all containerized export cargoes are covered by duly processed export declaration permit prior to loading. He shall sign and submit the sequence of loading prepared by the shipping agent to the inspector on board carrying vessel. He shall prepare a signed inspector certificate of loading and forward the same to the export division processing office. Its equivalent unit concerned, together with copies approved export declaration permits within 5 working days from the departure of the vessel. He shall certify and sign certificate of inspection and loading 24 hours after the departure of the vessel, and he shall perform such other duties that may be assigned to him from time to time by his superiors. Inspector certificate of loading or report of loading inspector. After completion of loading, the loading inspector assigned to carrying vessel shall within 5 working days after the vessel departure accomplish the inspector certificate of loading and attach their properly endorsed export declaration permits to be submitted to the export division processing office or its equivalent unit concerned. Duty requirements and overtime working conditions. The district collector of the customs may be authorized overtime service when the interest of the service so requires. Bulk and brick bulk. Loading of export cargoes at dockside. Export permits covering export loading shall be presented to the customs inspector prior to the actual loading. The customs inspector shall have no authority to inspect or open goods being loaded unless otherwise authorized in writing by the collector of customs. Loading of bulk and brick bulk export cargo. The customs inspector on board the vessel shall permit the loading of export cargo only upon presentation of any authority to load issued by the following: Export Division, Export Coordination Division, Office of the Deputy Collector for Operation for Constructive Warehousing and Immediate Exportation and Foreign Transshipment Permits. He shall carefully verify the loading permit to the quantity and kind of cargoes to be loaded on board the vessel. He shall comply with the instructions appearing in the permit. If any of the issuing authority, he shall make certain that the cargo to be exported is intended for the vessel which he is in charge and for that particular voyage of the vessel. For all exportation loaded at shipside, the exporter will send to the customs inspector on board of the vessel through the patron of the carrier a note conducts which will show name of the vessel to which the cargo is consigned, name and license number of the carrier, name of bags, bales, cartons, etc. it contains, name of the exporter, and number of the export declaration. As it being loaded, export cargo shall be checked by marked numbers if any, except shipments of bulk cargoes. When export cargo weigh on shore under customs supervision is exported, no quantity excess of weight declared shall be received on board. Upon completion of lading, the customs inspector on board shall execute the inspector certificate of lading in 5 copies. Loading of passengers, baggage, or crew personnel effects. The customs inspector on board shall not examine incoming passengers' baggage. However, if no examiner is on hand during night time, Sundays and holidays, the customs inspector on board may inspect and pass the hand-carried personal effects of incoming passengers, retaining on board articles, goods, effect subject to duty and or tax which should be sent to the office of the bay service section. Outgoing passengers taking valuables or jewelry abroad shall be advised to secure certificates of identification from the export division, and it shall be duty of the customs inspector on board the vessel to verify that such articles are actually taken on board by attesting on the certificate of identification that such jewelry are actually bought by the passenger in board. Customs transit. Customs transit means the customs procedure under which goods are transported under customs control from one customs office to another. Customs transit operation refers to the transport of goods from an office of departure to an office of destination under customs transit. There are 4 kinds of customs transit operation. First is from port of entry to another port of entry. Second is from port of entry to another port of entry inland customs office. Third is from an island customs office to port of entry as exit point for outright exportation. From one port of entry or inland customs office to another port of entry or inland customs office. Section 18. Transshipment. Customs procedure under which goods are transferred under customs control from the importing means of transport to the exporting means of transport within the area of one customs office, which is the office of both importation and exportation. Special instructions to customs inspectors relative to the discharge of transship cargo. First is goods from a foreign port may be transshipped direct from carrying vessel to another vessel engaged in the costwise of foreign trade receipt of written permission from the collector of customs. When a foreign transshipment permit, an authorizing the transfer of cargo from a foreign port is received by a customs inspector on board of a foreign vessel, he shall permit the discharge of consignment, causing it to be checked by marks and numbers. Bulk and break bulk cargoes for foreign transshipment shall either be discharged directly into the receiving vessel if it comes alongside, or otherwise transship it in lighters or discharged at the pier for eventual loading for the receiving vessels. Containerized cargoes for foreign transshipment shall be discharged at the pier for eventual loading to the receiving vessels under the same conditions started in section 15A, item number 2 above. Instructions relative to foreign transshipment by CCCD. After having a duly processed at the Deputy Collector for operations, the foreign transshipment permit in case of containerized cargoes in which supporting documents shall be coursed through the Customs Container Control Division for posting of container numbers and their eventual loading. Section 19. Transfer of imported cargo to outside CYCFS by CCCD after having been duly processed at the Office of the Deputy Collector for operation. The permit to transfer of the to the outside CYCFS shall be coursed through the Customs Container Control Division for posting the container numbers and their eventual transfer. The permit to transfer to outside CYCFS shall then be transmitted to the office of the Chief PIO or its equivalent office. Thank you.